Welcome, everyone, to Family Comes First. I'm Vincent J. Russo.
And I'm Victoria Roberts-Strogan. Thank you for joining us. This past season has been full of incredibly inspiring stories.
We love sharing them with you, so let's take a look back. The best of Season 9, right here on Family Comes First. Over this past season, we have shared powerful stories that moved us to tears.
We watched the compelling story of Tim Brown, who took us minute by minute through the collapse of the World Trade Towers. And now we see our heroes, first responders, facing life-threatening ramifications due to their heroism.
Yes, 15 years later. I was so pleased that we also had attorney Troy Rosasco to talk about the resources available to these brave men and women. Let's take a look at Heroes of 9/11 on Family Comes First.
I guess the best place to start is at the beginning. You know, what happened that day? Where were you?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was a New York City fireman assigned to the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management under Mayor Giuliani. Our office space was in 7 World Trade Center, so
Wow.
the first plane actually flew over the roof of our building.
Did you hear it?
I did not hear it. The power went out in our building, and then it came back up about 4 seconds later. And with my training and experience, I knew that meant something major had occurred. I just didn't know what it was. The people who were sitting facing Tower 1 could actually see it.
Wow.
And so they jumped up and ran toward me, and I actually had to stop one young woman, and, like, grab her by the shoulders and bring her back to reality and say what happened. And she said a plane hit the tower. So that's the first I knew of what happened. I went down the escalator, and the lobby was full of firemen. We call it organized chaos. The firemen waiting for assignments from the chief. And I heard someone yell my name, Timmy! And I looked across the top of the crowd, and I saw my best friend, Terry Hatton. Terry was the captain of Rescue 1, the elite firefighters of Manhattan. I ran over to Terry. He was 6'4", so with his helmet and his boots, he was 6'8". And we hugged. We were together every day, me and Terry. We just lived and breathed the fire department together. And he had his big Halligan, a big pry bar in his hand, and he squeezed me tight to his chest. And he kissed me right here on the cheek. And he said, "I love you, brother. I may never see you again." And Terry was one of those guys who was always way ahead in the way he thought. 4 or 5 steps ahead of everyone else. And I laughed him off, but he was already running through this whole thing in his mind. Terry and I had gone to Oklahoma City together the night after the bombing, and we had been in Atlanta when the bomb went off in Atlanta at the Olympics, and we had tremendously bad emergencies and fires in New York City together that we survived together. And I just thought it was silly that he was saying that to me. And it turns out in the end it would be the last time I ever spoke with my best friend.
What I do, Vince, is there is a law that was recently reauthorized called the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act. Okay. And we talk about sometimes where Congress doesn't do all that we hope they do. Well, this is one of the times when they got it right. Okay. And someone like our own Congressman Peter King and Representative Carolyn Maloney, Senators Gillibrand and Schumer really came through.
Bipartisan.
Yeah. And they really led it through Congress. And it was a great day for American democracy because we're taking care of the heroes.
So Troy, how does a first responder enroll in the program?
They should call the toll-free number for the World Trade Center Health Program. And that toll-free number is 1-888-982-4748. And they are wonderful on the other end of the phone, and they will go through the process and get you enrolled.
Any restrictions on on the health side in terms of what might be covered or not covered?
There's a list of about
Okay.
70 conditions
Okay.
that are covered. They started out primarily being aerodigestive, so things like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, rhinitis, sinusitis. Then you also had some digestive problems, such as GERD. And now, today, unfortunately, what we're seeing the most of are cancer cases as a result of being exposed to all the toxins. And some people don't realize how bad it was down there. I oftentimes explain it as a toxic volcano because you had both buildings come down. They were filled with PCBs and asbestos, which we already know are toxins, and they were in a pile covered with jet fuel. And that jet fuel from 9/11/2001 burned on top of that pile until January or February. So you can imagine that plume of toxins that everybody down there was exposed to. And it has unfortunately created a wealth of cancerous conditions that people are dealing with today.
Yeah. We saw Christian and Terry Killeran, who are fighting to have their son Aiden, who has Down syndrome, attend the same school as his friends and siblings. Let's take a look at Parents Know Best on Family Comes First.
First of all, tell us about Aiden.
Well, Aiden is the oldest of our three children. He's 13 years old.
Right.
He has a younger brother, Christian Riley, and a younger sister, Shannon Daly.
Lovely.
He's, in many ways, just like any other typical kid. He's been a blessing beyond words in our life. He's a joy to us and to his brother and his sister and to the community at large.
So his community knows who he is.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
That's
That must
basically-
give you peace of mind a little bit.
It does.
Yeah.
It's a large part of
Yeah.
our life, our community.
It's really the backbone of what we're fighting for, really.
Right.
What's going on? What happened?
When Aiden graduated 6th grade, we exercised, or he exercised his right to choose the next school that he was going to be going to, which was West Hampton, which is where 99.9% of the graduates of Remsenburg go.
Right.
But unfortunately, West Hampton refused to accept him because of his diagnosis of Down syndrome. Their argument being that they weren't equipped or they didn't have the resources to provide for his education. And because of that, we ensued a federal litigation against the district, which has now been returned to the state level, and that's where we are today.
So all of his friends, his brother and sister, there's a clear path for him to continue his education. At the school, that would be the natural path for him.
Yep.
But there's more to it too. I know you want him to stay in this community because it has to do with his future success.
We do. We're really looking more than just his education. We're looking to his entire life and our life and his life in the community. And it's so important to keep him in our local school, navigating our streets and, just hanging out with his friends,
Yeah.
Being part of his community.
What are the kind of challenges then are parents facing on the educational front here when they have a child with Down syndrome?
Sure. Well, I'd like to say, unfortunately, that, in Aiden's case and with Christian and Terry's very amazing advocacy, that they're the exception, they're not the norm. But unfortunately, in 2016, we're still battling the ability for schools to really include individuals with Down syndrome and other disabilities in the classroom. So we still face a lot of challenges when it comes to inclusive education, modifying the curriculum. Down syndrome is an intellectual and developmental disability. How do we modify the curriculum so an individual with Down syndrome can learn better? There's this whole notion of universal design for learning. You may be reading Romeo and Juliet in your English class, but maybe in order to modify the curriculum, you could pair the movie and an application on your iPad. There's ways to institute technology in the classroom, and unfortunately, we're still battling the schools that want to put us, decades behind where we've come thus far.
I worked for 7 years in the classroom teaching in an integrated setting with young children. Early childhood is my specialty. So my students were 2 and 3 years old. And so 1/3 of my student population came to me with IEPs. And they, which is,
What's an IEP?
it's an individualized education plan, and that is, they're part of the special education population. And they just need some extra support. And that document is a legal document that helps bridge their education to the general curriculum.
Who creates the IEP?
Well, you have a team, so administrators are involved, teachers, parents. You can have a parent advocate in there as well while you're creating it.
And what are some of the resources that are available through the IEP to parents and children?
Well, they vary. I mean, it's an individualized education plan, so every child's IEP is incredibly unique to them. So you can have transportation adaptations, technology adaptations. It just depends on what extra support the child needs.
And I assume you've gone through many of these meetings. Any input you'd like to give for parents so that who are now traveling that path?
Yeah, be as proactive as possible. Be positive. Be nice, and you know your child best, and so you need to advocate for your child for sure.
And I would also say for those parents that are, pioneering a path just like we have, there are resources that you spoke of. In our particular case, direct teacher consultants, when everyone was kind of daunted by the task at hand because Aiden represented something novel, something new. And we brought in a direct teacher consultant to kind of teach the teachers about curriculum modification and those types of things, which was a great help. So there's things that you can do and resources that you can tap that'll help the team, because it is a team like you spoke of, create the program that's going to be most effective for your child.
We also saw the story of Cindy Soma, whose generous act of kindness in donating her kidney helped save a life.
We also met with Jillian Cohen, the recipient of a gift of life. We learned about the importance of organ donations from Karen Cummings of Live On NY. Let's take a look at saving lives on Family Comes First.
So Cindy, it was some time ago, but
5 years ago.
amazing, amazing. But how did it begin? Where did it start?
It started with a family member that I have that had juvenile diabetes, was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at the age of 7. And in her early 30s became a kidney dialysis failure. So after many fundraisers and after many things that we've tried to do to save her life, and even just to save money for a transplant if it was possible, I decided to get tested. And I did it without telling anybody because I didn't want to get anybody's hopes up if it wasn't a match. I actually, when I did it on my own, and I put you had to go to a lab and take your blood and then put it in the mailbox. And myself, and when I put it in the mailbox, I said to myself, I'm going to match. I just knew I would.
Oh my goodness!
And then when I matched is when I told her that this was going to happen.
And it gives you chills.
It was, and then after that there was
But then
a
it gets
long process.
so much more complicated, right?
Yes.
So then there's a whole
Yeah,
process.
so
The
talk
Mayo
to us
Clinic-
about the process.
The Mayo Clinic, which is where it was performed in Rochester, Minnesota, which, by the way, I thought I was going to Rochester, New York, but it was Rochester, Minnesota.
It's a longer drive.
And yes, much longer. They are fabulous. They are a city in of itself. Their transplant team is unbelievably beyond reproach.
Once you get through that piece, then it's not so simple that you're just going to donate this kidney to this.
Well, it turned out to be an incredible story.
Right.
We were a 3-point match. What they would like is a 5-point match. So on the day of or 2 days before when we arrived in Rochester, at the Mayo Clinic, they decided, they came to all of the people that were going to be donors that day and said, you're a 3-point match to Elise, but you're a 5-point match to Jill. Jill's husband is a 5-point match to somebody else. And it wound up being a 6-way swap that day.
Wow.
Had one of us said no, because we wanted our kidney to go to who we specified, it would have been all or nothing deal. And they never pressured us. Matter of fact, they did the opposite. They said, you can turn around and this can be over today, you can leave.
So you knew all of this before you went out there?
Yes.
That there was going to be this swap?
This swap, yes.
So that had to be, you had to really be taken back by the whole concept of it, because I'm sure you weren't thinking that initially when you were going to donate their
Absolutely
kidney.
not. No, I was saying to myself, this I want this to go to who I want it to go to. And then I said to myself, if I'm a 5-point match to a stranger,
Right.
her odds of everybody's odds are greater, including Elise was
Right.
who I was.
Everyone's odds go up.
She was a 5-point match to a 19-year-old girl whose sister was donating.
Wow.
So if the sister can decide that she's going to donate to a stranger, how am I to decide that no, I'm not donating to someone who I don't know in Maryland?
Start at the beginning and tell us your story.
So I was born with a rare liver disease called biliary atresia. And what biliary atresia is when the bile ducts, when you're either not born with them or they malform.
Okay.
So that makes bile build up in your liver and then cause you to get sicker and sicker.
Terrible.
And it's a pediatric liver disease.
Okay.
So at some point, you needed a new liver.
Yeah, we always knew that I was going to need a liver. We just didn't know when exactly.
Right. How long you could make it without the
How old
transplant.
were you when you got to that point?
I was 7 years. Well, I was doing fine until I was 7. A cancerous tumor was found in my liver. Hepatocellular carcinoma. Wow. I said that wrong.
Yeah.
That's okay. We wouldn't know.
And then so that they found the tumor, which made my liver get sicker and sicker.
Yeah.
And then they immediately put me up to status 1,
Wow.
most critical, on the pediatric transplant waiting list. And within 16 days of being on the transplant waiting list, I received my liver. So I speak for Live On New York about why organ donation is so good. Like, if one person can save a life, even if you don't know them,
Yeah.
it helps so many people.
Yeah, and you're looking at Cindy, who's done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to get over that hurdle of
That's-
if it's saving one, whether you're a cadaver donor or a living donor,
Right.
if you can do your part.
How many lives are you affecting?
Well, we're affecting thousands because one person can actually save up to 8 lives.
Wow.
Well,
through
so tell
organ
us about
donation.
that. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Through organ donation, because
Yeah.
you can donate both kidneys, both lungs, your liver, pancreas, your heart.
Oh my goodness.
One person can donate up to eight organs via transplant and enhance up to 50 lives through tissue transplants. And that could be skin for people that are badly burned in fires. It could be bone that's used in knee replacements. It could be used in dental surgery. So one person can make a huge difference.
Welcome back to Family Comes First. We have been looking back at the best of season 9.
On Listening to the Deaf, we had the opportunity to meet with Diane Monaco, Julia's mom, and Jacqueline Sims of the Cleary School for the Deaf. They provided us with insights on children growing up with hearing loss.
And we then met with Annalise and her mom, Alicia Allague, along with Francine Atlas Bogdanoff of the Milneck School for the Deaf. Let's take a look at Listening to the Deaf on Family Comes First.
Julia was diagnosed with a profound bilateral hearing loss when she was about 7 or 8 months old.
Cleary School provides services for children who are from birth through 21. So as soon as parents find out that their child has an issue with hearing, they reach out to Cleary School for the Deaf.
And you have a different array of needs and conditions within that student
Yes.
body as well.
Yes.
So-
But all of the students that are at Cleary are deaf.
Okay.
They're either deaf or hard of hearing, and then they may have other disabilities as well. Yes.
From being at Cleary School, number one, Julia she's with her people. You know, she is. Has friends who are deaf. She has teacher assistants who are deaf. She has teachers for the deaf. So it's her culture, it's her world, and that's very important for her development, her self-esteem. So that's huge. The Cleary staff they've been there for a really long time, and they've taught me a lot, and they have worked with our family and with Julia to get her to where is right now.
Tell us about your friends at school.
Oh,
What do you do with them?
I was chatting with them, and I study with them. I study math, social study, EI, something like that. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite course?
What's your favorite class?
Oh, my favorite class is art and computer.
Ah, computer. Nice.
So, Mom,
Yes.
how'd you make the decision to have Annalise at the Milnick?
My decision was made after we had found out Annalise was deaf. The audiologist pretty much handed me a binder and said, here you go, figure this out. And in there were quite a few schools. And Milnick was the school that I called that somebody didn't say, let me have your number, we'll call you back. They actually put me through to somebody.
Now, technology for deaf people is, everybody sits there and texts back and forth. They have video phones right now. If you need to speak to a person, you just type in, phone them up, and you see the person in front of you. And you just chat, kind of like FaceTime. If you need an interpreter because you need to speak to somebody, you can just ask for that to be brought in, and they'll give you a Spanish interpreter. They'll give you an English signing interpreter. It works and has changed people's lives. It has been able to make the world a lot smaller for the deaf. In the old days, everybody was very local. Now, because you can be in contact, you can get all the resources you need, it brought it to a very small place.
Our next show was a real eye-opener into the world of adoption. We first met with Elva Ann Orlandini and her children, Carl and Curl, who shared their story with us.
Then we had the wonderful Ann Carlo, who has provided a loving home to a number of children with special needs. Let's take a look at a 21st century family on Family Comes First.
Well, I have 6 adopted children and
Whoa, 6?
6 adopted
Wow.
children, yeah, and 2 bios. But for the sake of some brevity,
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on the last 4 children that were adopted. 2 girls from Ethiopia, they were adopted as older children, and then 2 boys, twins, that are from Florida. And the ways in which they came to me were very different. The 2 girls came through a phone call that I received after seeing something in the Long Island Catholic, I would say. There was an ad that said they wanted children for what they call a camp. A camp is really a way of saying that they're going to have these children come to this country, and then as they're seen by different people and they're hosted, which I did, they will be adopted. So those are my 2 girls from Ethiopia, and my 2 boys came later on.
I'm going to jump right in and just ask, what was it like being adopted into this new family?
At first, it was nerving. It's nervous, sorry. And I think that, in my heart, it was kind of I had a great chance to getting to know how mom is like at home, and how being a mother can also help on children that are in need, like me. And she was experienced with other kids because she has kids of her own. And I knew that she can, help me with the things that what I needed, to get by through life.
Children don't have a choice. It happens to them, and they want another family.
Right.
Did you guys want another family?
Yeah,
well, of course. It's kind of hard not, living out in the world without a family. It's like when you look at other families and you don't have one, and you feel very envious about that. Like you see, a mom and dad, holding hands with their child, and you see yourself being alone like nobody else. And it's really hard to call yourself into a family.
Even when you're older, you want a family.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Like everyone's supposed to have one.
Like for support, just in case you need someone to talk to, or you want to hang out, or let's say if you wanted to celebrate this because you got your new job.
Seems like there are challenges and there are joys, and if you had to say to a new parent, this would be something, manage your expectations, because it would seem like you have a vision of how you might want it to go, and parents might be discouraged if it's not exactly that way.
Yeah.
So, what would you share with a parent?
I think that probably the most important thing is that each child is an individual, and each one has their own set of needs that need to be addressed, and you have to meet them where they are. You know, so if you look at each child as like a brand new being, and try to put aside all of, what they came with, all the baggage that they came with, and everything, and just, get to know that child as the person. I think that it just sort of flows from there. I've never had a child that I haven't bonded with, and I must have had probably hundreds of children, through my life in the last 20 years or so.
Our last show of the season was incredible, bringing back Lana Noon, who was on our show back in 2009 as she brought to life Operation Baby Lift.
Yes, this was an amazing event in our history, which resulted in saving the lives of over 10,000 Vietnamese children. Let's take a look at Operation Baby Lift on Family Comes First. So Lana, here we are to talk about this beautiful play that explores the stories of these children and the families who took them in and gave them loving homes. Tell us about this project.
Well, thank you. And yes, we had waited many years for a feature film or a play about Baby Lift, and there just wasn't happening. So 9 of us, 8 of the unsung heroes and me, decided we'd write our own play. And we were very fortunate to meet up with a playwright, William Bryant Doty. And he had just recently retired, worked in Hollywood and for the National Archives. And he said, yeah, I'm looking for a project. So he became our, we call ourselves 9 characters in search of an author. He became our playwright, and we've got the play Children of the April Rain, co-written by 9. Then on April 22nd, we got the call, come to JFK, she's coming home. Heather was very ill. She was hospitalized on the final day of the Vietnam War. I watched the fall of Saigon from her hospital room, feeling like I was in a twilight zone of life. My daughter's in a hospital, and Saigon has just fallen. And Heather died on May 17th, 1975 at 4:30 in the afternoon. 3 babies were left, and our daughter Jenny is the final baby ever placed from Baby Lift.
And your son named one of his children?
Yes,
Heather?
yes, my son,
How
our son
special.
Jason is from Korea. When he and his wife Rosemary were expecting their first child, he said, Mom, if it's a boy, we're going to name him after Dad. If it's a girl, can we name her after my sister, Heather? I said, oh my goodness, yes. Another Heather Noon is in the world. So my 13-year-old granddaughter is Heather and knows about her Auntie Heather in heaven.
Vincent, looking back, I realize how much I've been changed by meeting our guests and hearing their stories. Their strength and their grace is humbling.
Yeah, it truly has affected both of us. It's all about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with such complex challenges.
Yeah, and you don't really know what you would do in a situation like some of the ones we've heard about, 9/11 or adopting children with challenges. You like to think that you know what you do, but I think that this gives us strength to believe that we can, hearing our...
Yeah, our guests are truly inspirational. And it's wonderful to know there are also resources, family, the community, and faith in God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For more information and a list of resources, you can visit Vincent's law firm website at vjrussolaw.com.
Thanks to all our viewers for joining us. And remember, family truly does come first.